Hello, and welcome to another exciting episode of Tripod, and it is a good one. I'm joined by Victoria Weber, who you may remember from a previous show, where she discussed the vibrant TikTok platform, Animal Crossing, and cats. Victoria's always sneaking cats into our discussions. Anyways, as a follow-up to our last show, Victoria's sharing a book report on the book Humor Seriously: Why Humor is a Secret Weapon in Business and Life, and how anyone can harness it, even you. We're going to discuss the power of humor, leaders versus managers, and how employees want flawed leaders, so stop trying to be perfect. If you're new here, download some of our other episodes and consider subscribing. If you're a subscriber, thank you so much for your ears and your support.
You're listening to Tripod, a podcast produced by Tricycle Creative to help safely navigate creative business owners through the worlds of digital marketing, strategic content creation, and business growth. Host Ross Erosion is a marketing consultant, content creator, and entrepreneur who brings you helpful tips, social media updates, inspiring interviews, and his own unique perspective on how to tell your story and grow your business. So if you're interested in being a better marketer, business owner, or creator, sit back, relax, and let's get pedaling.
I had something brilliant to start this show with, but I don't remember what it is. So now the listeners are getting this.
Yes. Even in the last podcast I was on, how this came to be is I recommended a book that had not been published yet. And since then, the book has been published, and I read it to say,
I outsourced my book report series to Victoria. So that's on this episode of Tripod. You're seeing outsourcing and delegation in full effect. I remember. Look at this. We're getting right back to it. Now I remember what it was. I think it's important to tee up why I outsourced this to you. Not only because it was the book that you brought to me in a previous episode that you and I recorded, which if you haven't listened to yet, go back and listen. You're going to learn all about turnips. You're going to learn all about bells. You're going to learn all about tickety-tock. You're going to learn all about a lot of great stuff. So go back, tripodpodcast.com. You can check out the previous episode I did with Victoria. I believe it was a rewind episode, if I'm not mistaken. So
yes.
Check it out. It was a lot of, what happened in 2020. I'm not talking about 2020. I'm not talking about that. We're not talking about that right now. It's a disaster. But here's why I outsourced this to you. I think it's important that I am honest with my listeners, and who many of them, if not all of them, are creative business owners. And in the past 6 months, I got reading fatigue. And I don't mean like there were many generations of many people who had no other option than to read for entertainment. Not necessarily active reading, but what I usually read are business books. I don't know. I'm just very curious. I think curiosity is a very important aspect of being an entrepreneur. And so I read a lot of books, and they have helped me immensely. However, I was getting to the point where when and if you read too many books, you get in your own head. And you are, particularly if you're like me, you're trying to take the essence of the books and be a better entrepreneur, be a better creative, be a better employee, be a better manager, and put it all together. And the problem is if you keep doing that, then all of a sudden you get overwhelmed. And I think this is a very common thing. And then so what you do is you stop reading, and maybe you stop doing it forever. I do not plan to do it forever, okay? But I did pivot my reading into, I was like, I have to find things that are pure, that I enjoy, that I like. Not to say I don't enjoy reading business books, but fiction. Things that are still kind of massaging the brain, but in a different way. So I re-upped my my Comics Unlimited, or my Marvel Comics Unlimited. I've been reading comic books. I'm a 38-year-old man who reads comic books, but I think that's okay. I think. Victoria, I don't know what you think on that. What do
I
you
mean,
think?
I work for a man of a similar age who also reads comic books.
Okay, so listen. So I think I also gravitate toward comic books because I am working on a book of my own. So little first secret release there. I'm working on so layout. I was very interested in layout and things like that, but also I just like comic books. So reading that and reading getting back into just reading fiction. So I'm still reading, but I just had to step back. And if you're out there and you feel like I don't, again, it's very, with everything, digital marketing, entrepreneurship, you get overwhelmed. It's okay. It's okay. So that frames this whole podcast today because you came to me with this book. I was very interested in it. In fact, I have even bought it. I have downloaded it. It is on my Kindle. I have started 5 pages. I'm 5 pages in, okay? But you were really excited, really passionate about it, and I wanted to have you share your insights from reading this book. Now, the book is called Humor, Seriously. Why Humor is a Secret Weapon in Business and Life, parentheses, and how anyone can harness it, even you. That's right, you, the listener. Even you can harness humor. And the book report series is a short series where I just give you kind of like Cliff's Notes, if you will. This is not meant to, you should, if you're intrigued by the notes that Victoria shares today, then go to the show notes, tripodpodcast.com, or check out the show description. Buy the book. This is meant to just give you a little nibble, right? Right.
yes. Yes.
Okay. So Victoria has diligently come with notes. This is why I love her, right? She's one of the people, the good people who I knew would be an all-star. She came with notes. She's got a lot of notes. She's going to share with you some, and we're going to talk about a handful of different concepts from this book.
Yeah, and the reason why I was so interested in this book in the first place is this story goes back to 5 years ago, maybe 6. I don't know. I've lost track of time, so I don't count years anymore. Um, but I was in kind of a professional rut. I was in a sales role, but I had so much creative energy that I just had no place to put it. And I started taking improv classes. And the reason I was so drawn to this book is trying to create the comparison of how humor is actually beneficial in a professional setting and how it's helped my career with a lot of now I'm in marketing with a lot of the brainstorming, coming up with creative ideas, and just I'm currently living at my place of work. I think most of us are.
Mm-hmm.
And so to be able to take a break from that, because a lot of times I'm like, I don't want to read about my job when I'm still at home where I work, but also
totally.
read about
Like
it in
where
my free
I
time.
need the separation, right? You need that separation. And
Mhm.
I'm glad you brought this up because I think a lot of people, whether they are in a corporate environment or they are entrepreneurs, they own their own business, I think sometimes they tend to at first constrict, shy away from being themselves and more into this mold, right? Like, oh, this is the professional mold, right? And like anything, like I think maybe everything, you live in the gray space. Do you want to be full on slapstick comedy with your clients? I mean, it depends on what you do, but probably not. Or do you want to be so professional that you are Boersville, USA, and it feels like you're an actor? I told my wife at one point when I left one of my jobs that I was like, I feel like I come home and I'm exhausted because there are portions of the day where I feel like I'm acting. I'm not being who I am. I'm being who they want me to be, or even who they need me to be, right? And it just didn't fit. And when you're an entrepreneur, I've said this on previous shows, if you're not doing it your way, why the fuck are you even doing it? You know, and I think that like that does now again, it doesn't mean again you can't if you want to go full on slapstick, you can own it. You can own that, and you have a niche. But I think I'm going to use a phrase that was used in an episode I did with Shelley Neff of Urban Betty. Step into your power. And if you are someone who is humorous, funny, has this personality, this sensibility, consider bringing it into your business. And I know Victoria's gonna break down and bring us some things. And if you're not, consider this potentially as an opportunity for you to develop it, because as I'm sure she's going to bring up, humor can really help to break down defenses.
Yes, I will. This is a perfect transition to a quote that I have from the book, as well as there are some myths that we will be dispelling
Ooh.
today.
Okay, fire away.
So the quote is from the book: humor is a superpower, but unlike invisibility, laser vision, and being superhuman, it's one we all possess.
And I think people
So
don't know that. I
some
think,
inspiration.
yeah, that's great. I think it's a great place to start. So why don't you start off with kind of the first bullet point item tip for people who are interested in incorporating humor. And again, this is from the book Humor Seriously: Why Humor is a Secret Weapon in Business and Life.
So the first myth, which I have been experiencing firsthand in my current role, is that people think that humor has no place amid serious work. But the best part about this book is it was written by professors who did research. So they actually have studies to back this up, which I love. I love that they have data and they figured it all out. But people now more than ever are looking for more authentic human leaders. And I loved this part that they want leaders to be aspirational, but also flawed.
Huh.
Um,
Okay.
and
I like that.
and that self-deprecating humor actually has, if you're a manager and your subordinates do management ratings, if you are self-deprecating, they will rate you higher on trustworthiness and leadership ability.
Whoa. I'm a huge self-deprecator, so that makes sense.
The biggest.
I'm the biggest. I'm the worst at everything. So no wonder my staff has always loved me in the past. Well, I think that speaks to like the flaw. I think self-deprecation speaks to flawed, right? They're related. They're in the same ecosphere, if you will. And that's because I think no one likes to work with a know-it-all who makes no mistakes.
Yeah, or doesn't acknowledge
Oh, even
mistakes.
worse. Yeah.
The challenge you run into, though, is as you get higher and higher in the corporate ladder, that humor becomes more important to make you relatable. But if you are, I guess, bottom of the totem pole, be careful to self-deprecate because you don't want to
Yeah.
show
That's a good
incompetence.
point. When to wield the self-deprecation.
Hmm.
Yeah, because I think also when you're at the lower part of that, using that same metaphor, lower
Like,
part
I
of
don't know a better way to say it.
yeah, I don't know. No, it makes sense. If you like, I think you want to, it is important that you start to prove out your value and worth. And
Hmm.
and what you don't want to do is throw things out there that would sidetrack that or even give doubt. I think there's a lot of actions speak a little bit louder than words in that point. When you've moved up, there's something to at least be said that you have some a backing reason. You've established some trust or experience to get you there. If you're a reader of the Peter Principle, you may think otherwise, but still, at least to get to a certain point, Peter Principle says you'll
I,
fail to the highest level. But still,
I
I
mean,
still think it applies.
it still applies.
It
It still
does.
applies as you're getting towards the highest level.
Correct.
Um,
And I'm not talking
and
to incompetence on this show, so I think we're good there. I think we're all in agreement. If you're listening to this show, you're not an incompetent boob. So that's great.
no matter what anyone tells you.
No, I don't think it's no matter what anyone tells. I don't know. Okay, so self-deprecation, showing flaws and being able. I think presenting flaws through humor is a very powerful way to move to get that into the workplace.
And I can imagine anyone listening all of a sudden panicking. Oh man, I'm not funny. This is like, I want to make my teams more productive and trust me, but I'm not funny. That leads into our second myth that you have to be funny. So, from the research, they found out that even more important than actually being funny is signaling that you have a sense of humor. So you can reap these benefits by
Oh.
laughing at other people's jokes or cracking a smile or showing that you appreciate humor from the others around you. But you don't actually have to be the one making the jokes. You just have to show that you appreciate it and that the team is free to use their humor.
This might be something I believe because it applies to me. But here we go. I'm going to leave a dramatic pause there for everyone to. But I think, and maybe this is something from the survey. I don't know, or maybe you'll get to this. But I believe that people, weirdly enough, there's ascribe funny people to also be smart or at least clever.
I would say so. There are times where, so sometimes I go a little too far on the funny scale. Well, not like crossing boundaries, but sometimes it's like there are 5 layers to this joke and you have to connect each layer. And they're like, Victoria, no one's gonna make all those connections to like get to why it's funny because
Yeah.
it ruins the joke once you get there. But
Like my wife and I are like that with office jokes. Like we literally just say the line and we both crack up. We skip to level 5. Like we go from 0 to 5 and then it's like our own language. It's like, yep, I see. And like we work in our own head through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which is what makes it funny to us.
yeah, or like so definitely a huge fan of The Office. Also, we've talked about Schitt's Creek.
Oh, so good. So
That
good.
is that is
Okay.
something that
No, a funny thing on Schitt's Creek. We Oh God, I forget what we were doing. I think we were maybe looking at travel destinations. I mean,
mhm.
that ain't happening for a while, but we were looking at travel destinations. We were looking at, when you do that, you're like, oh, what are some top things in this place? And one place we were looking at, they had a botanical gardens. And all we kept saying to ourselves was, or saying to each other was, I'm not going to the botanical gardens by myself like a pervert. Like it was just, I love that line from Schitt's Creek. But
So I had a funny story happen with Schitt's Creek, except the problem is many of my coworkers have not seen it, but then I had to send them a reference clip for them to then find it funny. But seeing sometimes there are two people who consider themselves subject matter experts, but might not necessarily understand a concept, but then they try to explain it to each other. And so, from an outsider's perspective, they're just trying to out explain each other, but might not actually understand what's happening. So then it literally was like, so it says to fold the cheese, fold in the
oh,
cheese,
fold it in.
just
Fold
fold
it.
it in
Yeah.
as they're going back and forth, not
You just
understanding what
fold it
they're
in.
saying.
Yeah. And as we all know, there's nothing funnier about a joke than explaining a joke. Right?
Oh, yeah,
Because
totally.
definitely that's really where the joke gets funny is through the explanation. This is called sarcasm. Just a side note. This is an aspect of comedy called sarcasm where that's not really true. If you're explaining a joke, it has probably gone terribly wrong. Okay. What else you got, Victoria? What else do you have again from the book, Humor Seriously, Why Humor is a Secret Weapon in Business and Life. And if you're at all intrigued, show notes, tripodpodcast.com or in the description. And I just want to tell you, if you're intrigued from this podcast and this book, please click those links. It's no cost to you. But if you do buy those links, then I get a small fractional percentage of the price, and that helps to support Tripod. So, Victoria, go ahead. What else you got?
So, I know that you likely have many followers who are in the creative space or have creative teams. I had another quote that I read it once and then I keep quoting it so many times. It's not as related to our next topics, but it was at the beginning of this chapter. It was by John Maxwell, and he said, "If you're leading and no one is following, you're just taking a walk."
Wait, that's at the beginning of the book, I think. Because I told you, I think I'm only like 5 pages in. But this is where you and I are simpatico, like we have the synaptic connection. I highlighted that. I'm a nerd, even though I'm not doing this book report. I'm still going to read this book. And when I read, I highlight in Kindle. Then I export the highlights. Then I do my book report. Just a little peek behind the curtain of my nerddom. But I know for a fact that is a quote that I highlighted from the book. I love that quote.
It's just, there are people who think they can stronghold their way into respect or having a team respect them, or if they demand it, if they're the loudest person in the room. But that's not how it works. And you can claim to be a leader all day, but if no one's following it, no one respects you, then it's a challenge. Whereas some people, again, it ties into humor. And we'll talk about different like types of humor later, but sometimes it's nuanced or quieter or more under the radar. But I just loved that because, yeah, you can be a self-proclaimed leader, but if no one's following you or respects your advice, then you're just going for a walk.
This is the fundamental difference between manager and leader, too. People think that because they are a manager that they are a leader, and that is not true. Those things can be mutually exclusive. You can be a manager, which is by designation of role, you have responsibilities to people. You are a manager. A leader can exist because of that level, but a leader can also exist at any level, leading people above them, below them, to the sides of them. And that's ideally when you have a manager, you want them to be a leader also, but that's not always the case. And, I've been in rooms and I've, corporate boardrooms where what you just said, just because they're yelling the loudest, they think, and I think this is also a situation where honestly, gender comes in too. Without painting with a broad brush, but coming from broadcasting where I worked for 10 years, it is a dominated by white males. And I know for a fact, because I worked with many people of color, with many women, breaking down those doors, getting into those rooms, or having your voice heard can be a challenge. And, so this is a phrase why I highlighted it, is because it's a fundamental difference between being a manager and being a leader. And I just love that quote. So good, great pick, Victoria.
And I laugh because I'm like, I've worked in tech for most of my career tech sales prior to this. And we won't delve too deep into it, but if it's a topic that anyone is interested in, just doing research on even employee feedback is a lot of times skewed gender-wise, that men are rated based off of performance strictly, and women are rated on performance, but they also have to be likable. So a lot of the subjective matters turn into like critiques of personality, whereas men don't typically find those. And I'm like, there's hard data to back this, just years and years of analyzing performance reviews.
We're going to take gender inequality in the workplace, and we're going to put a giant pin in it, and I'm going to put it on the board for because we could spend a whole podcast on that. So let me ask you this, because I know you have prepared your notes. I want you to just tell me when we get to a good kind of just like, oh, okay, when we can pivot to if there's sections. I don't know if you have them sectioned or not. It's
yeah.
fine. I'm
Yeah,
just thinking this
I do.
through. If we want to take a quick little break, So just you tell me. We're planning the show live, people. This is how I do it. So
Improv.
improv. Yes,
So,
and go ahead,
yes,
Victoria.
and so that's in the book. Um, so this was in. We'll go through. There are two separate points that I thought were very interesting from this quote about leadership. And some of it I read, and I was like, oh, this is what I do. I didn't know that it was a positive thing or actually like a best practice, but awesome. And it's how I just launched a cat themed ABM campaign. Um, so one of the best anecdotes from the story comes from Google X, which is where they just do a lot of innovation. And if you tell people, go come up with some good ideas, bring them to the meeting, that puts so much pressure on the team. They will psych themselves out. And you can be like, there are no bad ideas, but you know that
Yeah.
people are judgmental. But instead, you can ask for the silliest, craziest, worst ideas possible. And then it just shifts the energy of the room. People will be more creative. And if they're actively trying to come up with the worst ideas, then there's not as much fear of judgment. Um, in internal brainstorms in my current role, a lot of times I just typically offer something ridiculous or random. And I'm like, if I've already said the most ridiculous thing, then no one else is afraid to say something more ridiculous. But then sometimes it actually evolves because with our software platform, if you're trying to wrangle a bunch of different platforms or you're in IT, it's like whack-a-mole. Just things pop up and you keep batting them down. And so it actually ended up it's having great business results as well. But it started off with, I'm like, I'll just go for it. I'll be brave. I'll say something utterly ridiculous. And then no one else will be nervous to say anything
See,
because
I
I've
love that
already
though
taken it.
because it compounds with your previous point of,
Mhm.
I would say, flawed, right? You're
Very flawed.
but it's thoughtful in it, and I think that the self-deprecation, right? These things pile on top of each other because yes, it takes a lot of guts to put yourself out there as the person who owns the worst idea in the room, right? But if that worst idea helps to get you to better or the best idea, then it has accomplished such a valuable role. And I love that approach because it happens so much where it's like, all right, everyone, brainstorm. And it's like, what? Like brainstorm is just, oh, you want us to come up with the best ideas? Okay, hold on. Let me just flip my brainstorm switch. It's like brainstorming in itself is probably another topic for another show, different methods you can do it. But I love that approach of, hey, everyone, throw out the worst ideas. Because you're right, it takes judgment out of it.
Um, and so you can have another podcast, or we can talk about the second point, but just a brief overview of, let's say you have your team, you're like, I don't know if we're that creative or not, and maybe people are feeling a little nervous. It's always easier to pull back from something extreme and make it less extreme. Um, but there was an example in the story of basically how comedians find the truth in things that happen every day. So, like, inside every joke is an intrinsic truth about everyday life. And so many organizations use the platform pitch. I guess it's where comedians just, someone's like, tell me about Sbarro pizza. Then they just make a bunch of jokes, but they're funny because they bring in the nuances of everyday life. So they've been utilizing this online platform with comedians. However, I'm going to put Ross on the line for this because
Oh
I can
my
help back
God.
him up with
Okay.
this.
Okay.
That one of the biggest parts, like one of my other favorite quotes, it's not even a quote, it's just part of a paragraph, is that if you want to jumpstart creative thinking on your team, you should seriously consider bringing in professional comedians.
Huh. Interesting.
So the fun part about particularly where we are in Austin, but also across the country, pre-pandemic there were five, there might be four now, improv theaters. So
Mm-hmm.
there are, and improv does not pay the bills. So there are people that I do like comedy sports with that are just across the country. There are people who are project managers, who are like digital marketers, architects, um, DJs, lawyers. So people from all these different backgrounds that might have expertise of the work world, of some of these topics, but just having an outsider kind of come in and liven it up. And that's the muscle you work in improv is the yes and bringing things more extreme and kind of getting everyone more comfortable to liven it up. So
I like
yeah.
that a lot because a couple different things. A, I think always having fresh eyes on things can be helpful, right? I think B, the comedy industry itself, I hate to use that stupid P word, but the pandemic, right? I mean, comedy subsection of events, but it took a hit, massive hit. Live
Mhm.
comedy, right? Took a enormous hit. And to your point, I think there are absolutely people out there who are comedians who are hustling to try and make it pay the bills, but I think a lot of them are doing that and something else, right? While they
Mhm.
work on the craft. I just like that it opens up the door to those creatives, comedians, as and if you're out there, if you happen to be an aspiring comedian listening to this, this might be a business revenue model that you could look at. I mean, this is essentially like it's almost like a simplified version of a corporate gig. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And like many comedians, they may not love doing them, but they recognize that corporate gigs pay the bills. Like this could be a way to transform your comedy and your desire to do comedy and latch it to business with people who have money to pay you.
Or if you have prospective clients who are looking for this type of service, if anyone asks you for it, we can make sure to get you all hooked up. Um, when I was in the research sphere pre-pandemic, some of the kids online are calling it a panoramic or just anything along those lines. People have just stopped using pandemic as a
Yeah.
word. Second City had a full-on program. It was almost like six figures, but you would fly into Chicago and they would do a whole multiple day session for market research,
Wow,
like
that's cool.
having people participate in
It's
market
thoughtful.
research with comedians.
Yeah,
So,
that's really cool. Well, on
um,
that note, let's
yeah.
take a quick break. All right. And then we're going to come back with more notes, lessons, tips from the book, Humor, Seriously. Why humor is a secret weapon in business and life, and how anyone can harness it, even you. That's a mouthful. We'll be back. It probably comes as no surprise to you that Instagram is the favorite social media platform among creative business owners. Instagram also continues to find new and interesting ways for small businesses to generate revenue, promote their products, their service, their expertise. But Instagram does have a major limitation: external links. They won't work in your captions, and you can only use them in stories if you have a large follower count. Sure, they give you link in bio, but that's just one link. Problem solved with solo.to. Solo.to is one bio link for everything. When you create a solo.to account, you can showcase tons of links for your business. And if you're a creator like me, you can even embed music, videos, and podcasts right there on Instagram from your favorite platforms. Want to see Solo.to in action? Head on over to Tricycle Creative's Instagram account at Hello Tricycle and click the link in our bio. Solo.to offers a free plan to get you started, and you can upgrade for as little as $1 a month. Use the referral link in this episode's description and in the show notes, and you can save 10% off any upgrade package within 48 hours of signing up. Solo.to. It's one bio link for everything. We're back, and we're laughing. We're having a grand old time with humor and how we, and you, can bring it into your business with this book report by Victoria. Thanks again for joining me and really putting in work. I gave you homework. This, and I just was so happy that you were like, well, who the fuck is this guy giving me homework? But you you brought it, and I'm really enjoying hearing about your takeaways from the book, Humor Seriously, Why Humor is a Secret Weapon in Business and Life. So what else did you find really insightful, really interesting from this book that creative business owners should know or can use?
So I think it piggybacks. I'm allergic to buzzwords, but that is what came to mind. Piggybacks onto what we were talking about. Maybe leaders aren't always the most obvious, but if individuals do want to work on building this type of culture within their organization, there are a couple different ways that you can do it, and not all of them are obvious. And it's just identifying people within your organization, or even maybe hiring on these different types of individuals that can help the culture. There are three of them. So there are instigators, which are more of like the class clown, but like
Woody Woodpecker.
But in the corporate world,
Oh.
yes. They are like the rabble rousers, rule breakers, and they just do things differently and are just nonconformist by nature. They don't like to be put in a box. There are the culture carriers, who are natural leaders, who are rising stars in the organization, where humor is just a natural strength. It's part of who they are. And again, as we discussed, that does help people believe that you are more trustworthy and competent and intelligent. So maybe that couples with how they are rising to the top. And also hidden gems. These are what might be a little more subtle, a little more nuanced, but people who are diligent, under the radar, high performers who provide unexpected opportunities for levity. There's always the quiet one, but when they speak, it's for a reason. Many times it can be humorous, but it just flies more under the radar, but they still help support this culture. So I just thought that was very interesting.
Like three kind of archetypes, if you will, right? And I think a component of it is finding the nice blend. As with any workplace, right? You're looking for complementary blend. If you have a team full of one type, might be too much. Might be a little much, right? I mean, it depends on the team, to be fair. Like maybe you would want an entire team to be made up of the rabble rousers, and that could be functional, but you at least want to think about it and be very intentional about it. Cause I think that, sometimes it's the old, they don't get along because they're so similar, right? Mm-hmm. People, it's like, man, when you look at it as an external third party, you're like, they're so alike, but that's why they don't get along, and it's a very interesting thing. And I think, that can be challenging. So trying to think about these archetypes, and I would say this too, I think that'd be hard, and why you have to be thinking intentionally about it, because everyone is nervous as hell in an interview. right? So
Yeah.
how do you like discover that in an interview? How do you discover humor in an interview? That's you have to be you have to be very thoughtful if this is something that you are sourcing for. Doesn't mean you have to tell them that that's what you're looking for, but I think that there are things that you have to do to set the stage, as it were. You know, because that's a nerve-wracking experience being a job candidate, you know?
And even myself personally, I was interviewing for a job last year, but then I got the job I currently have, so therefore I'm not currently interviewing. But when I had people who knew me within the professional world, but through the AMA, who knew me as a person and a professional, they were like, your resume does not reflect you at all. And they told me my resume was boring, which I was like, I know. I thought that I had to show that I was competent, and then I would show my personality during the interview. But then I was assured that it was okay to have a little more personality on my resume than I initially had. But I still even like I've personally never been called boring or heard anyone call me boring. But during the interview process, it's challenging depending on who the interviewer is to read them, to know exactly where the line is, and especially on video.
Well, that's also an aspect of humor, right? There's an aspect of give take too.
Mm-hmm.
And I would like to think like I am always fine or I'm comfortable in both roles. Not to sit here and be like, I'm a comedy genius. I'm not. I don't know. But I'm comfortable in both roles as like, you know, where you have like a slapstick and a straight man, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm comfortable sharing the stage, and that's not true of everyone, whether they are the interviewer or the interviewee. You know, they may come in and they may be like, well, I'm the headliner, you know, and the interviewer's the headliner. And then, like I said, they clash, right? They have a clash there. And I love, to your point about the resume, black, white, we live in the gray, right? I think that you have to figure out what you're most comfy with when it comes to your resume. As a recruiter, I can tell you, you know, as a former recruiter, not a current recruiter, but I don't know. As a former recruiter, I can tell you, you look at a lot of resumes in a day. And sometimes just getting something different is good. But different is not always good, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a balance to strike, because I know, because we worked on your resume around in that time, like you have skills to pay said bills. And I think if you were to completely overshadow that, you know, make it 10% 10% substance and 90% style, it's like you that's not a good mix, you know?
It's an interesting balance to strike, and not to harp on gender in the workplace, but I am very aware I am not 21. I've been out of college for quite some time, but I know that my appearance is youthful, my voice is very youthful, and so feeling like putting the humor on top of that as another layer would then make me not be taken seriously. So
Sure.
it was leaning more towards the skills. It's definitely a balance, but I was leaning more towards the only serious, here are all my skills that I can prove and validate, but it's okay to have a personality. And what I enjoy most is I didn't know it existed until I was in my current role, but a workplace that does appreciate all different parts of my personality and creative.
The other thing to that is, I think it is an important factor, and this is why so many businesses draw out interviews, which can, like when you're a candidate, it's the pits. But on one hand, I kind of understand is they get a lot of people with skills that match. What I think good recruiters and good interviewers, they're trying to find just what you're talking about, people who are good personality fits. And I mean, this is like applying marketing to your personal brand, right? Go back, listen Recently did an episode on the leadership brand. That'd be a great listen if this is something you're interested in. But this is talking about like when you're interviewing and you're a candidate, you're essentially creating your brand, right?
Mhm.
And I think if that is an authentic you, it is important that you set that you bring that into the interview. And here's the deal. If that's not what they're looking for, I know it may be hard to hear no, but long term, that's a good thing. You're not a match. It's applying a marketing strategy to be like, are you trying to be everything to everyone? Because if you are, it doesn't mean shit. Like if you're trying to be everyone to if you're trying to reach everyone, you're reaching no one. So you might as well be yourself, your authentic self, present that, and then put it out there and see if it fits. And that may mean a no from a company you want to be in, but it just may not be a good fit. And so I really intrigued, and this personal story of your own of how you had to make that change, I think is great. So we're coming up towards the end of the show. I would want to ask you, Victoria, is there one last takeaway or anything else from the book that you'd like to share with our listeners?
So, final thoughts about final thoughts. Um, the last chapter, it was really interesting because they talked to a lot of nurses or people who worked in hospice to get input from people who knew they were in their last days, weeks, to see what they wished they would have done. And so to give some inspiration to people, YOLO, no regrets, that there were just a couple that I wanted to touch on that for boldness, they were saying that they wished they had lived more fearlessly. They wished they had lived a life more authentic to themselves. Wished they'd stopped and appreciated the moment more. And then they wished they had laughed more and not taken themselves so seriously. So hopefully
It's a pretty
that will
powerful list.
to embolden people to be like, don't wait until it's too late. Like if you want to start being more your full self in the workplace or in life, be inspired to do it. I have friends who there are a lot of changes kind of going on behind the scenes while they're kind of in lockdown and quarantine. And we have the chance right now to think, okay, so my life kind of paused for the last year. What do I want it to look like when I finally continue on
Yeah.
after
I mean, I'm there as a business owner, as a person. I actually don't know how you can't be there at this point when as we record this, we're March 2021, vaccines are starting to get rolled out. You see a light at the end of the tunnel of the life we once lived, but I mean, I don't think we'll ever be there again. I don't know, but I don't know how you can't sit here at this point and think like that. And, I think that list of things, can you read that list again? The things that people said?
Yeah. Yeah. So I
wish they did in their life.
I wish I had lived more fearlessly. I wish I had lived a life true to myself as far as authenticity. I wish I'd stopped more to appreciate the moment. And I wish I'd laughed more and not taken myself too seriously.
So guys, if you're out there listening, apply those to your life today. Don't wait till, I think those are such powerful statements, but and maybe you're really lucky and maybe one or more of those don't apply, which is awesome. Like kudos, my applause to you, but chances are I think those are very aspirational statements, and I think that's something you should be thinking about for you and for your business, for your family, for your loved ones, for your kids. These are just very powerful statements. So, Victoria, I want to say thank you so much. You did homework on this book, and I really appreciate it. So again, the book is Humor Seriously, Why Humor is a Secret Weapon in Business and Life. There are links in the show notes, tripodpodcast.com. Also links in this actual episode description. So if you are thinking about grabbing the book, please use those links, again, at no cost to you. But it gives us a little bit, like 5 cents to put towards a new cord for Tripod for the podcast. And to that list, I should tell you, Victoria, I just want to know if you believe in me. I'm asking people. That is a very powerful list. I have a new life goal that I'm going to add to even that list. Is I want to be able to dunk a basketball by age 40. So I have a year and a half to do it. So do you believe in me?
Yes.
That's a no, folks. She doesn't believe.
No,
She
that's
doesn't believe.
that's a why are you even asking? Of course I do.
Because I need the power of belief to do it.
I
Because
think
gravity is working against me very intensely currently. I have a negative vertical leap. I somehow jump into the ground. I'm not quite sure how it works. The gravity in wherever I am is always more intense than for other people. It's really weird.
I know no one can see me, but I'm like I'm 5'2", so
And
gravity's
she
just been
can
working
dunk.
against me the whole.
And Victoria can dunk. She's doing it right now just to rub it in my face. She's
I
dunking
can
a
dunk
basketball.
on you with words.
Oh my God, why would you say that? You're so mean. Oh God. All right, well, if you're meanness, where can people find you, Victoria? Do you want to promote anything, any of the socials or the whatnots?
I'm so I am on LinkedIn. I believe it's Victoria Weber ATX. But if you're bored and want cat-related content that is not me, it's my cat. So I have a TikTok and an Instagram that's kitty literature, but with litter with 2 T's.
Oh my God. Oh my God. All right, folks, give her a follow. LinkedIn, and for the humor, check her out. TikTok. And I want to remind you, go back and listen to our previous episode. I believe, like I said, it's a 2020 rewind with Victoria. She schools me. Turn-ups, bells, and TikTok. And I think it'd be good for you too. So until next time, I encourage you to keep pedaling.